Okay, so thank you very much, Aina, for giving us the opportunity to present our research in social marketing. I will explain at the end of the presentation what it is. And we are going to present three researches that have in common to be qualitative research and targeting older consumers. So we are doing a big gap, okay, going from adolescent to older consumers. And we focus on to which extent do digital technologies, mainly smart devices, empower or create vulnerability among this specific target. So I am going to leave the stage to Manel for presenting briefly the context.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for inviting me to present my a part of my PhD project or thesis. So first, I will introduce the context of our three studies. So aging of world population is a global phenomenon. According to the statistics of the State of World Population report, by 2050, 1 in 6 people in the world will be aged over 65 years, compared to 1 in 11 in 2019. According to several studies and reports, new technology offer several possibilities to aging well. So technologies offer possibility to detect, prevent, diagnose and treat diseases, and also to replace deficits related or associated in advancing age. So we are many examples of technology that helps elderly to aging well, like robotics and Paro, the interactive emotional robots. We have the reality virtual headset, which offer immersive experiences to elderly consumers, which are used as medical and recreational tools, devices. We have also the smart devices which can be used by elderly consumers and also all people who use smart devices, concerned by smart devices, like the smart can, who can prevent falls of elderly. And finally, we have digital twins, which represent predictive methods to prevent deficits associated to elderly age. Our three studies are more interested, or we are more interested about quantified-self smart devices. The quantified-self smart devices offer several possibilities or can help people to reduce factor risk, like we have saw in the precedent presentation. So the feedback delivered from quantified-self smart devices can help people to monitor their health or well-being. It can help people also to track their activity to achieve their goals, and they offer the possibility to consumer or allow users to interact with others in physical and virtual space via the app and the different app and possible the space of interaction offered by the applications. So I will present the first study, which about understanding how consumer or elderly consumer use the quantified-self smart devices to aging well. So to understand the link between aging well and the use of quantified-self smart devices, we use the subjective approach of aging well, which initiated by Baltz and Baltz, and which assume that elderly consumer seeks to exert control on their life by using three-component strategy, which are regular or adjustment strategy, the selection, optimization, and compensation. The selection, which consists on choosing goals or setting goals to aging well. Optimization, which consists to choice of behavior or means that help elderly consumer to aging well, and compensation, which means the choice of alternative means to compensate or to replace the original means of elderly consumer. In the same time, or in the other hand, we are interested also to the logic of use, which is a concept issue from the ethnotechnology of the sociology of the use of digital technology, and especially the work of Peru, which suggests to rethink the logic of use, rethink the effective use of the technology, and staying away or standing away from dichotomic logics that oppose bad or good uses and profane and technophile users. So the logic of uses shows that individuals can use digital technology or devices in several possible ways. There is multiple ways to use the quantified-self devices or the technology devices, and user have the choice to hijacking and negotiating the use of their devices. The first study, which aims to understand the link between the quantified-self smart devices and the aging well, is qualitative studies. We have interviewing 17 consumers aged between 60 and 75. And we have used as a data analysis method the thematic analysis. So our grid analysis allows us to identify three logics of use by the elderly consumer and a logic of disappropriation of the no use. The first logic is a self-monitoring and attainment of goals logic. Elderly consumers are more concerned about their well-being and health, so they will use quantified-self smart devices to achieve goals of aging well. So they are seeking to get feedback about their behavior to achieve their goals, behavior put in place to pursue goals of health and well-being. They will use these devices also to get feedback on their old habit, to maintain good habit or to change bad habit, disturbed habits. And finally, they will use these devices to have feedback on their behavior, strategy, coping strategy, compensation, and optimization strategy put in place to achieve their goals or to track their goals. The second logic that we have identified is the sociability logics. So people or elderly people will use these devices to participate, to have a social participate, to conform to a norm of a social group that use these devices. So they will refuse all representation of age identity and exclusion, digital exclusion that associated to old consumer. So they will use these devices to have a relation with others, with their sons or other people of their social groups. So there are a relationship of acculturation and accompaniment in the use to solve problem encounter in the use of these devices. They will use these devices to also compare their result with peers, and also to have a social conformity with the group. So there is a norm of social group which is users of quantified-self smart devices. And finally, we have a peer comparison relationship and not a competitive relationship. We are in the comparison of result with other people of the social groups or social group. So elderly consumer will use these devices to interact and exchange with other people. We have also identified a third logic, which is a logic of search of hedonistic gratification. So our elderly people will use this. In this case, elderly people will use this quantified-self smart devices for the playful, for entertainment and the fun aspect of quantified-self devices, and also novelty. So they are more concerned about the aesthetic dimension of the quantified-self experiences. Finally, we have identified a logic of no use or disappropriation. So they regroups people who are resistant, who resist to the use of technology to change behavior. They refuse the idea that technology can help them disturb habits or change behavior. So finally, we have addressed a table which allow us to have or to highlight the link between the goal pursued by elderly consumer to aging well and the logic of use. So people who emphasize the importance of physical and cognitive goals will use smart devices to self-monitoring. In the logic of self-monitoring, they are auto-centered and they are more concerned about their health and well-being. So we have also people who are more concerned about the social objectives of aging well. They will use these smart devices to maintain exchange and interaction with other people. And finally, people who are more concerned or more interested about the psychological objective, they will emphasize the importance of the fun and playful aspect of quantified-self smart devices. So I will, Roman will present his study after me. I don't know if he is listening to me.
Before to start, I really want to thank Mrs. Chabaliev and Mr. Mazias for their invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here and sharing our results with you. So let me introduce the second study, which talks about aging well and well-being, the role of smart devices in older adult physical activity practices. We published this paper with the Professor Agnès Helme-Guizon in the journal Decision Marketing in 2020. So, what about the context of the study? French population is getting older. In 2050, the seniors, who represent people aged over 60 years old, will represent 27% of the general population. Aging process induces a loss of muscle mass, but also a loss of cognitive and physical capacities. So, aging well represents an important health and social issue. We all know here that physical activity provides many health benefits. Regular practice of physical activity can clearly maintain seniors' capacity and, most importantly, their physical and cognitive autonomy. One important factor which can support physical activity practice is motivation. So for this research, we mobilized the self-determination theory. Self-determination theory is a macro theory of motivation with focus on the motivation quality. Social and physical environments can satisfy or frustrate three basic psychological needs. The need of competence, which represents the effective response to an environmental demand. The need of autonomy, which corresponds to the feeling in control of personal behaviors. And the need of relatedness, which reflects the sense of attachment to others who are important for us. This balance between satisfaction and frustration results in different forms of motivations. We can distinguish three main types of motivation, from amotivation to control motivation to autonomous motivations. The last type prompts the most sustainable behaviors and the highest level of well-being. So this theory is particularly adapted for physical activity behaviors. So based on this, this research aims at studying older consumers' physical activity practices and at showing the role played by smart devices, particularly on their motivation to engage sustainably in physical activity. For this research, we recruited 21 retired people aged between 63 and 82 years old. We used qualitative approach by conducting 14 in-depth interviews and 2 mini groups with respectively 3 and 4 participants. Concerning the data analysis, we realized a content analysis based on physical participants, physical activity practices, participants' relations with smart devices, and the self-determination theory. 2 independent researchers generated the grid. Now, let's move to the results. We identify 3 profiles. The first one is the constraints. The level of physical activity is low to very low. Most of the time, they practice yoga or self-gym. They don't feel competent or autonomous in their practice. So they show an amotivation or a controlled motivation. Concerning their use of smart devices, they are not linked with their physical activity. And more important, they feel a little bit lost with these smart devices. So physical activity and smart devices don't play a role in their well-being and in their well-aging. For this profile, we can propose 2 main recommendations. First, health professionals could promote physical activity for their well-aging by showing the diversity of physical activity practices. It's important for this group to clearly differentiate sports and physical activity. Secondly, we can modify their perceptions of smart devices by showing direct benefits for them. It's important to propose a personalized support for this group. The second profile is the careful. The level of physical activity is moderate to rather strong. Most of the time they enjoy jogging or cycling. They feel autonomous in their practice, but sometimes they lack professional support for the practices. The most important for them is practicing in a group. It's an important factor of their motivation. They show an autonomous motivation. Concerning their use of smart devices, this group shows an ambivalence by accepting the help of smart devices, but in contrast, they highlight their fear of losing social links and human interaction. Physical activity and smart devices for this group play a role in their well-aging. We can propose 2 main recommendations for this group. First, we need to improve their level of competency by proposing physical activities in group supervised by health professionals. Second, we can promote smart devices which allow them to share their results. It's important to highlight the social aspects of smart devices for this group. The final profile is the committed. Their level of physical activity is strong to very strong. They enjoy practicing physical activity at high intensity. They feel autonomous and competent in their practice. They can practice alone or in a group. They clearly show an autonomous motivation. Concerning their use of smart devices, this group use smart devices in their daily life. Smart devices contribute to their physical activity results and performance. In addition, they want to discover new functions of these smart devices. For this group, we can propose 2 recommendations. First, they need to discover new physical activities to challenge them. Second, they can integrate companies for co-creating smart devices and assume the role of ambassador among the other seniors. So in conclusion, this research highlights the important role of motivation on seniors' physical activity, and most importantly, how smart devices can support this motivation and their well-aging. So now I pass the floor to my colleague, Professor Agnès Helme-Guizon. So thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Romain. Now we're turning to the third study. So in the first two studies, we've targeted people from 60 to 55 and even 84 in the second study. And we saw that depending on the age group, but also motivation, competencies, there was sometimes an empowering effect of the technology and sometimes a vulnerability effect due to the technology. In the third study, which was conducted with some colleagues from Canada, one from the University of Saskatchewan and the other one from the Queen's University, we've explored something a bit different, which is to which extent do mature consumers, which means consumers between 50 and 65, to which extent those consumers are anticipating vulnerability by using those smart devices, those technology. This is based on the theory of use it or lose it. That's to say, if I don't use one competence, I'm going to lose it. So this was I would say, the basic assumption of this research. And we have, again, conducted some qualitative research to explore this issue. So the conceptual framework or the theory that are basing our research is about consumer vulnerability. That was defined by Baker in 2005. And that says that it's a dynamic, and this word is important, dynamic state of powerlessness and of dependence that is primarily due to power and control imbalances in the marketplace. Remember, we are marketing researchers, okay? But this can be applied to other contexts. And what matters is that people feel that they are lacking control over the situation. This experience of vulnerability might hinder goals and affect personal social perception. In some cases, this can generate low self-esteem, which is endangering the motivation to do things. Okay. And this is all the most important for an older consumer who have been considered as being a vulnerable population. Fortunately, there is recent research saying that older customers are not vulnerable per se, but there are some situations that will make them feel powerless. So this is what I said. Okay. In our research, as I said, we are going to concentrate on consumer anticipated vulnerability, which refers to the fact that consumers anticipate that they are going to have little control over what's going on, maybe because they are aging, but also because they are interacting with technologies that they don't know and that they've been taught that they don't have the competencies. Okay, so they are going to make some choices in order to mitigate these effects of vulnerability. Remember that they are consumers, they are human beings, they're not passive, so they act like agents who are going to make choice to develop coping strategies in order to, I would say, to increase their power, to restore their power. So the objectives of the study are to understand the role of customer, the role they can themselves play in anticipating or managing consumption-related vulnerability when they are using smart devices. Here, when we use the word smart devices, we refer to any, I would say, daily life devices, which can be GPS, which can be home automatic, home automation devices, or even quantified-self watches, etc. It's not only objects that are targeting older customers. So our participants were 99, age 52 to 65, as I said. It was a convenience sampling, and they were owning one or more smart devices. We've excluded those who had only a smartphone because we wanted to go beyond the communication benefits. We wanted to have some devices that might have an impact on our physical activity. We use the qualitative approach with in-depth interviews and focus groups, okay? And we transcribed the data we had, and then we had a priori coding theme emergence, okay? Theme generation. So the results are that, for sure, our customer perceive that there's going to be a lack of competence, and this might be a source of future vulnerability. So they feel that smart devices are pervasive, they are everywhere, and they do not manage all the functionalities. They need some help to use the smart devices, and they feel that this is going to create vulnerability because as they're going to be aging, they will be even less able to use those smart devices. So there will be an increase in their lack of competence. So they prefer not to use them and saying, well, today I have some competencies, for example, for cooking. So why would I use a connected cooker, for example, since I know or today to do those things? And they don't want to lose their current skills and abilities. Also, they feel, and this goes back to what was said previously, is that by relying too much on those devices for interpersonal relationship, they are going to lose their ability to interact face-to-face with people, and this will create a future vulnerability. Also, they anticipate a loss of autonomy, independence, and freedom, in the sense that they forecast that if they do not use some of their abilities they have now, they will lose it. Here we have the example with the automated home devices, saying that if I remain seated in the couch, I will lose some abilities in terms of physical activity. So again, according to the, if you don't use something, you're gonna lose it. And also they perceive a lack of control in the decision making, in the sense that those smart devices provide personalized recommendation, and they feel that if they rely on those personal recommendations, they will not anymore be able to decide what is good for them and what is bad for them. So this is the reason why they prefer not to use them. So to mitigate those effects, to mitigate this anticipated vulnerability, they developed what we've called the coping strategy. The first one is what we've called, because this is a new finding, we called it dissociating, saying that, well, a smart device is no more than a tool. It's something with some function, and I have the power to use it, to use some functionalities or not to use it. Okay, I am kind of the master, and I decide what to do with it. Okay, so it's not a companion, it's not something that is part of my life, it's just a tool with some functionalities. Also, there is this idea of minimizing the importance of the object. That is to say that it's not the one that, again, that decides. It has no symbolic meanings, meaning that I'm not defined, or my identity does not depend on these smart devices, meaning that I'm not cool because I'm using, I don't know, a smartwatch, for example, okay? This is not part of what I am. I am what I am, independently of those smart devices. There also the idea of depreciating, saying that, well, today they don't use it because they are just gadgets that are unreliable tools with a planned obsolescence, so they are not interesting. You know, they are not valuable tools. And what was interesting is that they were referring to a washing machine, to fridge, saying then when fridge arrived on the market, this was a real innovation, while a smart device like a watch is just a gadget, and that's gonna fade in a few years. Okay, so before it was better. No. And also there is this idea of projecting, which is that those tools are good either for young people, and it was really interesting to say that they were really, I would say, very depreciating the younger that were addicted to phones and other smart devices, while they were not. Okay, and also they were projecting the use of those devices to older consumers. I mean, very old consumers, those who are not autonomous anymore, those who are not competent anymore, and could rely on the functionalities offered by the smart devices. I think that's quite interesting. So this might be good tools, but not for me. Well, that was the results of this study. So if you have questions, then we will be able to expand a bit more on the result, because of time we had to be very quick. And we wanted to finish with one slide on, 2 slides, but I'm going to be very quick, on social marketing, because we are not from your field, but we are from the social marketing field, and we thought it was interesting to, well, just to bring a few insight about what is our, I would say, our broad general framework. So social marketing, of course, refers to marketing. It goes back to the 17, and the idea at the very beginning was just to transfer what we know well to do with marketing techniques to more social causes, like promoting physical activity, for example, or promoting healthy behavior, or even promoting environmental friendly behaviors. Here you have the definition by the ESMA, which is the International Social Marketing Association, which says that social marketing seeks to develop and integrate marketing concepts with other approaches. That is very important, because it just has now a broad view, as it embeds the individual into a broader system. I would say it later. So social marketing practice is guided by ethical principles. It seeks to integrate research, best practice, theory, audience, and partnership insight to inform the delivery of competition-sensitive and segmented social change programs that are, of course, efficient, equitable, and sustainable. So what is interesting there and what has to be reminded is that in social marketing, first of all, we really try to understand what are the needs of our target population, which is there with the idea of being customer oriented, getting some insights. And based on that, we are going to, segment our population, meaning that you really need to tailor the intervention to some groups because they have specific needs. And there, one of the main challenge, once you have identified your segment, is to find the benefit, the added value that will be more valuable than the actual behavior. Meaning that if you smoke, probably it's for pleasure, okay? I need to find a competitive benefit that will be more valuable than the fact than smoking, for you to accept to quit smoking. And this is done most of the time through exchange, through, as you said, participatory design session, both with individuals, that can be users, customer, whatever, and with any other actors like a association, administration, brands, retailers, in order to engage this ecosystem towards a behavioral change. Okay. So here I've just mentioned a method that is really, I would say, popular, that has been developed by the University of Griffiths in Australia. Martin, that's for you. Okay, so they're very well known, especially for koala saving. Okay, and they've developed lot of programs, and they have developed this method that is called CBE, which is based on 3 pillars: co-create the messages, the program, the intervention with all the stakeholders, then build a program, and then engage people through living labs, through pilot studies, and then through broader programs. So the idea is not to not only to have some bottom-up strategies, but more to have this systemic approach, which is brand new. Okay. So how we can apply that to physical activity? I think Romain and
Yes. Okay, so to conclude this presentation, we can show you some examples of recommendations according to the social marketing steps. Firstly, you have to identify a need. You can ask the question, what is the problem to be treated? For example, in our cases, we can identify a lack of physical activity among older population. So we want to promote physical activities through digital intervention. In a second time, you need to clearly understand your population. Okay, what are their behaviors? What are their needs? For this, you have to conduct preliminary studies by combining several methods. In our research, we used qualitative approach to understand the different profiles, but you also had quantitative approach. And based on these results, you can segment your population on several criteria and propose adapted actions for each segment. In our research, we need to adapt, for example, smart devices with seniors' expectations. For example, provide smart devices which can strongly support social links, for example. And now I pass the floor to Manel for the last 2 steps.
So for the fourth steps, we have to testing and optimization the use of our techniques used by social marketing to adapt devices and to encourage the adoption of virtuous behavior. So as our study shows different logics of use of smart devices and different profiles of users, a living lab approach, which consists to test dispositives, devices, technological devices on the elderly. So living lab approach help co-design and help co-creation value with elderly consumer. So we propose to testing the solution to better meet the expectation of elderly consumers. And the final step of behavior stage of behavior change process is to evaluating the social marketing intervention through models, different models who help the practitioner of social marketing to evaluating their techniques put in place to change behavior by elderly consumers. So thank you for your attention. If you have questions, we are here. I can't change the...
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation and for taking the time to present the social marketing approach. Anne has one question.
Thank you. I'm really happy to see research on older adults. I have two questions. One is a bit related to your question on adolescence. Your age range for older adults is quite broad, especially in study 1 and 2. And I was wondering if you saw any differences between the older elderly and the younger. If we look at like healthy diet and research there, older adults often say, well, you know, this is kind of normal for me to have health problems, and I'm already doing better than most of my peers from my age because I'm still alive and they are either hospitalized or dead. So I'm actually doing quite well, and changing my health behaviors isn't going to add anything to me, is not going to prevent the fact that I will have health problems because this is normal at my age. So I wonder if you saw any differences between like the 62 to maybe 75 and then really the older adults. And a second question I had is it's focused on the individual. How about the family? How about when family relatives encourage older adults to use these things? I don't know if you know this this little video of this elderly man who, for his birthday present from his kids, gets a smart cane and a smart fork and a smart bed, and he's really miserable because they're forcing him to be healthy. But then, like the second day, he's figured out that he can get the teenage boy who lives next door to walk the cane, and he just gives him a 6-pack of beers, and he puts books in his bed, and so he found a way to avoid all of this. So, yeah, I was wondering about what about older adults, older elderly versus the younger elderly, and what about the influence of the social environment and the family?
I start, Romain, or you prefer?
Yes, because I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
It's about the age of participant.
Oh, okay. I think the justification for the choice of the age of participants.
Okay. I will maybe answer, and you.
Yes.
So we in the 3 studies we have a different age of participant. In my study, I will talk about my study. The participant of my qualitative research is aged between 60 and 75 because was looking to understand the adoption of healthy behavior by the elderly, but active elderly, because there are three stages of old age. We have the young elderly, the oldest elderly, and the more oldest elderly. So I was looking to understand how young elderly or young consumer use the quantified-self smart devices to engage a preventive approach, and they are volunteer to engage in this approach, preventive approach. We in marketing, you correct if I said wrong things, but in marketing they are Orient and Guillaume article, which determine the age of average consumer is 60 years over 60 years in marketing studies. So I use this age to identify my participant to the participant of the first study that we present. And the idea is we are in the active age. We are looking for young, older consumer and understand how they use the quantified-self smart devices. And I let Romain explain the reason he.
Okay. Yes. So for the study number 2. We choose retired people because retirement can be an important step in your life. And retirement can largely impact with the self-determination theory perspective, your need of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So it was one part of our research. We really want to understand what impact can have the retirement on seniors' physical activity.
Maybe to complement the answer, actually there's a difference between what we call the objective age and the subjective age. And what we saw, especially in study number 2, is that what mattered more was not the objective age, but more how people perceive their age. So we had some people that were over 70 but were really active and were not in the first group. Remember, the group of people who are not really, do not feel really competent, autonomous, etc. Really depending on how they feel. I mean, beyond the age. And the second question was about the social environment. So, Romain, maybe about the social support.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Okay, so what I've seen in the third study is that the family was really helpful to train them, to explain them how to use the smart device, and they were okay to ask for some advices from the family, which was helping them to engage with the smart device. So yeah, Probably we could have focused more on the social environment, because this is also part of the explanation of whether people engage with it or not. Yeah, but not for my younger one.
In the case of the second logic of use, sociability logic of use, our consumer said that a social environment prescribe the use of devices. So there is an impact of the co-creation of value with other people or people who are in the social environment of elderly. So we have this effect on the use of devices.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question that could be both on study 1 and 2. It seems that the smart devices are really useful for those who are already active and in this process of willingness of behavior change. So for the in the study one, I think you presented 3 categories of people. For the one and the two, is the need of smart devices the main problem in their willingness of being more active?
In the first and second logics of use, people are more concerned about their health and well-being, so they use quantified-self devices to promoting health and to in the preventive approach. They are not devices which include in medical process or medical monitoring of health, like people who suffer for chronic diseases. So they are voluntary to maintain their health and well-being.
Okay, because in the study one, I think you talk about the or study two, the autonomous motivation or controlled motivation, and yeah, maybe it seems that a part of the population needs more to maybe switch from motivation to another than to use the devices.
It's the second study. I let Romain answer.
Yes, for to answer your question, in the second study, for the first profile, the constraints, they don't practice a lot of physical activity because for some of them, because of their health conditions. Okay, and for them, it's not a priority of their well-aging and their well-being, and they don't see how to manage smart devices and how those smart devices can help them in their well-aging. So this is the most important reasons why they don't use smart devices.
Well, maybe to complement and to answer more directly your question, I mean, if you're not motivated to change behavior or to practice physical activity, it's not because you are given a smartwatch or whatever that you will practice more. I mean, from what I've read and from what I've found in my research, I mean, motivation does not come from the tool. It's more a way to support motivation and maybe change the type of motivation, because I think it was in the first research, knowing better your performances, how many steps you're doing, what you're eating, etc. You become more competent and you might develop more autonomous motivation, sure. But if there's no motivation, technology will not solve the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yes, thank you. So it's a question for study 2, so for Romain. How did you choose your sample, and what was the proportion of the 3 profiles? Did you have more committed or constrained people? Because it was not a big sample, but maybe you have proportion.
Okay, it was a convenience sample, and we recruited the older people with association in the city of Grenoble. And concerning the several profiles, we have 5 participants in the constraints, 11 in the careful, and 5 in the last profiles,
Okay.
the committed.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, we have a lot of persons in the second profile, but it's really interesting to note that, like Agnès said previously, the older person, for example, who are 82, are not in the first group, for example, in the contrast.
So it's not dependent from the age of the participant?
No.
Okay, that's interesting. Thanks.
In the same vein, I was wondering what rule you used to classify persons in each profile. Did you use a cluster analysis or something different?
Well, actually, it's a manual thematic analysis, which means that we've been reading many times our transcript, and from there we have identified some themes that we have organized into categories, subcategory, etc. And then we've done what we call a vertical analysis, which means analyzing the interview individual after individual. Okay, and we combine this with the horizontal analysis, where we have analyzed theme by theme and trying to connect the different themes. And based on those two analyses, we were able to build this qualitative typology. So we've not used any software because well, software are convenient, but you lose a lot of information, and then when it comes to tell a nice story, it's more difficult. And qualitative is about telling a nice story.